this is Misha, and you just saw us firing two new AR-15 retro carbines. The first, which is in my hand, is the Troy XM177E2. This one is in stock configuration. And the other one is actually something I kind of come up with. This is a Troy GAU-5A that I have retrofitted into a GUU-5P. So yeah, thought we'd share these. We've had a couple of videos on the Troy already, but there's not a lot out there on this type of gun, and it's really cool and really neat, so why not? Just to recap some of the history, Colt started coming out with the carbines right after the rifles began to get accepted around 1964-65. The first carbines were called the model 605, and they were nothing more than an XM16E1 with the barrel chopped from 20 inches down to 15, otherwise fixed stock full-length gas system. After that came out the 607, which was the first to introduce the CAR-15 shorter buffer tube and the CAR-15 shorter 7-inch gas system, and it had a 10-inch barrel. Now this is the one you'll see, the 607, that has the cut-down triangular handguard and the cut-down modified A1 stock. The tube was very similar with the two position, but it was a modified stock. Now these 607s were essentially handmade, and they were called the GX58-57 by the military. They acquired about 50, with Colt making about 150 total, so it was essentially a prototype. The Navy SEALs did use them in some combat, come back with suggestions, and that's actually what led to the Colt 609 and 610 in 1966. Now the 609 was very similar to this gun I'm holding here. It had a forward assist, except it had a 10-inch barrel with a shorter 3.5-inch moderator, which was a different style. It didn't have the birdcage on it, it was just a moderator. But the 609 was the first to introduce the metal two-position collapsing stock and the CAR-15 handguards, which would later be extended and copied for the M16A2. Now the 610 was the exact same gun, except it did not have the forward assist. The U.S. Army purchased about 2,815 609s and designated them as the XM177E1. The U.S. Air Force would also purchase the 610, designating it as the GAU-5A. The Army would call the 610 the XM177, so without the E. Those would go into service. They would be in Vietnam. They would find some problems, and they would address them. In 1967, the next generation would come out, and it would be like what I'm holding here. The Troy XM177E2 is a semi-auto replica of the original Vietnam-era gun, first purchased by the Army in 1967. Colt would call it the Model 629, and they would purchase about 516 originally, and further small purchase orders would take place in 68 and 69. The differences between the older carbines would be that they extended the barrel out to an 11.5 inches. Now in the semi-auto replica, it's out to 12 inches, so it has a legal overall length of 16 inches. The original guns would also have a longer moderator that would go to 4.3 inches, which this one is a very good replica of. It's not the same or an original because the original was designated as a sound suppressor by the ATF in the early 70s. So original ones, if you find them today, are an NFA item, and you have to pay for a $200 tax stamp just to have something that reduces the sound signature by maybe a decibel. But the law is the law. So today if you find these, they'll mostly have replica moderators. So these would see service in Vietnam. Some of the other upgrades, it would go from the XM177E1 to the XM177E2 would be the A1 lower, versus the E1, so we have a full fence. These would have chrome-lined chambers, and then in late production, chrome-lined bores. Very, very late production, the last ones. The buttstock was essentially unchanged. It had some of the other minor updates of the A1, such as drain holes and stuff. Now they would machine off the bayonet lug because you couldn't use it anyway, and also this would allow for the use of the XM177E2 grenade launcher. That's another reason the barrel was made longer. The 11.5-inch barrel would give a little more accuracy and more reliability. Although these were never perfected, that's why they were never officially adopted as the M177. They always remained an XM experimental type gun, although several thousand were in use. The Army would use these through Vietnam, and they would retire them in the early 70s. A lot of the old Army guns would be sent over to the Air Force. Now the Air Force, as we said in our first Troy video, adopted the 630, which was the same gun as the 629, except no forward assist. And they would adopt it as the GAU-5A/A. So, lots of nomenclatures here. To talk about the Troy a little bit, you might check out our first video on the other replica they did, but this is a really good replica. We've shot several rounds through both of these now, and they proved to be perfectly reliable. This metal stock is a very good reproduction of the Colt original. It is only 2-position. That is correct. It comes with an A1 grip. Has the A1 style teardrop forward assist, as you can see. Correct type there. We have A1 sights. A1 front sight here too. We have a pencil profile barrel. Now in the first video, I and a few other people on YouTube reported this was a 1 in 12 twist. In reality, it's a 1 in 7. Apologies for the mix-up. I think where it came from is on Troy's website. It says it's a 12-inch barrel, and I think some people reading it quickly thought it said 1 in 12 because they were expecting to see that. So this is a more modern 1 in 7 twist. It is chrome lined. So, take that into consideration. It does have M4 feed ramps as well. So you have some modern features for reliability. Other than that, though, it's a very good replica. We have reproduction property marks. And also, as you notice here and here on the magwell, Troy listened and they dropped their logo. So it just has the XM markings now. And instead of marking it on the side, which many people complained about, they now mark it on the underside here by the trigger guard. I don't know if you can see it on camera. There's 2 lines of text on either side of the trigger. So that's where the Troy markings are now. So people who talked about it, Troy was listening. So that was the XM177, which Troy just came out with this summer. The Colt would stop making these in 1970 and go on to other models, and the U.S. Army would essentially kind of lose interest in them and go to full-size rifles. However, the U.S. Air Force really liked the carbine status. They would acquire a lot of the old XM177E1s and E2s from the Army, and they would have their own GAU guns, and they would use these throughout the 70s. But getting in the 80s, they started to rebarrel, reprofile, refurbish these guns, and that's kind of what I've done here with the GAU-5A. I thought it would be fun to make it into a GUU-5P. Now, I know at SHOT Show, Troy said they were going to do a GUU-5P as well, but I talked to Troy in August, and I was told that at this time there was no plans to make those. So I don't know if they shelved them permanently or just put them on hold for 6 months. So I took matters into my own hands and got a Colt pencil profile 1 in 7 twist barrel, A1 flash hider, Colt carbine handguards, a Colt fiber light 2-position, of course it's on the same tube, so it is, buttstock, and reworked this guy. I also put a chrome bolt carrier grip in it because it was fun, and it's a really smooth, slick bolt grip. This is an original Colt grip. In fact, this gun's getting a lot of Colt parts on it as time goes on. Pretty much this entire barrel assembly's Colt, the stock's Colt, the grip's Colt, the bolt carrier's Colt. And I didn't mention on the XM177E2, it is stock, except I had a spare Colt M16 bolt carrier, so I dropped it into that gun. Other than that, it is all Troy as it is shipped. But yeah, the Air Force rebuilt a lot of their carbines, and they would go from the older 10 and 11 inch barrels to the newer 14.5, and even sometimes a 16-inch barrel, like is on this one here, whatever they could get their hands on, going to the 1-in-7 twist. Early on, they would use the pencil profile. Later, they would go to more the M4 profile, as seen on the Colt Model 727 type guns. But yeah, they would rebuild these, changing out parts. Like I put the fiber-like stock instead of the metal. You know, let's say the original metal was dented or rusty, they would replace it. Essentially, they would keep the old A1 parts as long as they were serviceable, and then as they would wear out, they would put newer production parts. This series, this rebuild series, was known as the GUU-5P. And what's neat about doing a GUU-5P clone, you can essentially configure it however the hell you wanted, because that's what the Air Force did. There's no real standardization. There's all kinds of pictures of different configurations. So that's just what I did. My main goal when I was doing this one, I wanted to make a lightweight gun. That XM177E2 with its sling is right at 6 pounds. This gun here with its sling is right at 5.6 pounds. So this thing is more than half a pound lighter, which is pretty neat. I mean, it's even when you load it up with ammo, you're right at 6 pounds. So it's a very light, handy little gun, reliable and fun. And I'm really glad Troy decided to get into the retro carbine market, because no one's really done it. I know Colt has been promising us they're going to do some, but now we're into October, and I've had word out to my Colt rep for 6 months now, and I don't even have an ETA, a price, or even a list of the models they're officially going to do. So if they come out, I'll grab them and we'll have another video. If they don't, I've got these guns in the meanwhile. And you saw us firing them. I'm very happy with what Troy's done here. They seem like quality guns. And they've really put some pains into it to make them look authentic and original. If you have any questions at all, feel free to talk below. We'll talk about these. I just thought we'd share since we were out this past weekend. Pretty day. Thought we'd take these guns out. I will say the XM177E2 has a little less felt recoil because it is a little heavier, but I like shooting this GUU-5P clone a little more just because it is so light and handy, and honestly I've always just thought this was a neat configuration. Keep it simple, no forward assist, and just a real slick side, real skinny barrel. I don't know. I always thought it was neat. I like these old guns. Anyway, I guess that's about all I can say about this. If I forgot anything, feel free to mention it below. And as always, we really appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, comment, whatever you feel like, and we'll catch you next time.